Hey, in this segment, we're going to talk about your ability to predict. This is one of the first indicators of moving from an amateur to a professional. The moment I transitioned from an amateur to a professional, following that commitment that we talked about in the earlier segment, when I became completely dedicated, studied the area of selling, I started taking notes on every exchange I had with customers, even recording these experiences on audio and video. I don't advise that because it might be against the law where you live. I would later study the material like a football team reviewed this audio and video like they do on maybe Monday after the game on Sunday, where they look at the playbacks. See, I didn't know it then, but this was how I gained my first real skill. It's called the ability to predict. See, to predict means to know what's going to happen next. I stumbled across this skill and found myself gaining this ability that I didn't even really know about because my ability to predict the outcome of situations before they even happened had shown up. See, I started to know exactly what I had to do each day. I started to know what people would say and do in response to what I said and did. This is called the ability to predict. You have it. Everybody has this ability. You've done it before. You've experienced it in your life. Anything that you've been committed to, the better this ability of prediction becomes. Maybe in a sport, a hobby, watching a program. You are able to predict the next move or the next thing that happens. Athletes talk about this a lot. We see, I was gaining the ability to predict exactly how many people I needed to wait on. Hey, I got to get in front of this many people to get this result. This became almost a natural thing. I then discovered that I was increasingly sure of what they would say, how they would react, what they would bring up, what they might initiate, even their thoughts and their concerns that hadn't even been spoken yet. See, I was starting to become aware and conscious that most situations are similar. They're not identical. They're not exactly the same. Many customers are completely different. But there's certain things that start to happen. And I was able to predict objections, complaints, stalls, and I would handle them before they even surfaced. Now you're moving into the, definitely into the mastery of your trade when you're able to do this. Prediction is the first key. It was as if things had slowed down, like into slow motion. And I could see what other players on the field were about to do. Wayne Gretzky talked about that. Michael Jordan talks about it. Tiger Woods talks about it. All great athletes have experienced the game slowing down, where they not only knew what they would do, but what others would do. It's called prediction. Well, by the time I had reached this level of ability, it followed commitment and it followed study. By the time I reached this level of ability, prediction, I knew at that moment I'd become a professional. Prediction is the great unknown and unrecognized asset of the professional salesperson, of the professional anything for that fact. I'd never heard it spoken about. I've listened to, thousands of hours of audio programs, read, I don't know how many books, hundreds and hundreds of books. I've never heard about this spoken about or written about, but I know today it exists. If you've ever read about great athletes, they talk about this same phenomenon, where they're able to know exactly what's going to happen. Okay? So, how do you get this thing? Well, for instance, you get it first, commitment, decide completely. Then you start researching, observing. I'm going to encourage you to get an objections notebook and actually start writing objections, problems, complaints, anything that you stumps you. I want you to write down. I'm going to tell you a little story real quick. Years ago, I was selling this product, and this product that I was selling was being sold to people that were worth way, way, way more money than I was. These were multi-millionaires that I was selling to. And I discovered quickly that with these people, they all had something in common. They had this in common. Not a shirt sleeve, time. Not a watch, time. They all were very time sensitive. Well, I started writing this down every day. Man, time came up, time came up, time came up. See, because I had very short time in which to make my presentation, and each of these people had a great concern about time, it allowed me, because I became conscious and aware of time, that I became able to predict. Now, I made a lot of mistakes with it. I remember this one prospect I had, he said, look, you got 60 seconds and that's it. And it stumped me. I'm like, oh my gosh, how do I do this in 60 seconds? And I wrote it down again. I'm like, you have to come up with a way to handle this. Now, the next person that said only got 60 seconds, because I was able to predict correctly, because I was starting to able to predict the future and know, oh, that's going to be his objection. I handled him without having to think about it. I handled him without having to be reacted against. But I predicted, oh, time's going to come up for this cat because he's professional, he's successful, he's moving, he's shaking. I could barely get an appointment from him. He's going to say, hey, only got 60 seconds. And I'm going to say, 60 seconds, sir, is more than enough time. Because I had studied prospects like him, opportunities like him, situations like him, I was able to formulate and prepare a solution. I was able to be responsible for the exchange. This customer became one of my best clients that I ever had, and actually launched my career in sales training. So how does one get this skill of prediction? Well, first of all, you'd have to observe accurately, without emotion or blame, and then make a note of it. Okay, you want to do this. You want to get a little notepad and start writing down without blame, without emotion, and just make a note. He said blah. He said blah. He did this. He says he's got to wait. He's got to think about it. He's got to... See, I just want you to pay complete attention and log it. You have to pay complete attention to whatever is said. No emotion, no blame. Record the encounter, and you'll start to see that you too have the ability to predict. Because what you'll discover is there's finite means a limited amount of patterns that you hear from people.